My boss fired me in front of the office on Friday. On Monday, he walked in to find me sitting in his chair, as his new partner's ally. Hi, I'm Emily. But before I tell you how it all began, let me know from which country you're watching from in the comments. I had worked at Henderson and Company for almost 5 years. I started fresh out of college, eager, ambitious, and full of ideas. I was the employee everyone admired quietly, the one who stayed late, went the extra mile, and always delivered results. My boss, Mr. Henderson, on the other hand, was the kind of man whose charm could be both intoxicating and terrifying. He commanded the office with an iron fist hidden beneath a velvet glove, and most people bent to his will, afraid to challenge him. I, however, believed in fairness and integrity, and that eventually became the very reason he wanted me gone. It all came to a head that Friday morning. I had been called into his office for what I thought would be a routine performance review. Instead, he made a spectacle of it. "Emily, pack your things. You're done here," he announced, loud enough for everyone in the open office to hear. My heart pounded as my colleagues stared, some in shock, some trying to hide smirks. He didn't even look me in the eye. There was no explanation, no prior warning. Just the harsh, sudden cut of someone erasing your life's work in a single moment. I collected my belongings with quiet dignity, ignoring the whispers and the stares, leaving the office behind without a scene. But anger simmered beneath my calm exterior, a fire that only grew stronger as I walked through the streets that afternoon. I wasn't just hurt, I was humiliated. And the truth was, I had seen this coming for months. Mr. Henderson had always been jealous of my ideas, my competence, and the praise I received from clients. Every project I led, every campaign I executed successfully, seemed to chip away at his ego. He started undermining me subtly, taking credit for my ideas, assigning me impossible deadlines, and isolating me from decision-making processes. I tolerated it at first, thinking professionalism required patience and discretion. But the final act, public humiliation in front of the office, was the tipping point. As I walked home that day, I began piecing together a plan. I knew I needed more than just anger. I needed leverage, information, and allies. I spent the weekend quietly reaching out to contacts I had made over the years. Partners, clients, and even vendors. I needed to ensure that when I acted, it would be thorough, strategic, and impossible for him to counter. This wasn't about petty revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and teaching him that underestimating someone like me was dangerous. I also realized I had something more powerful than his arrogance: knowledge. I knew his company inside out, the accounts he manipulated, the deals he personally controlled, and the insecurities he tried to hide behind charming smiles. I could exploit these weaknesses without breaking any laws, without crossing ethical lines, and still deliver a blow that would leave him reeling. By Sunday evening, I had a plan. I would need patience, precision, and timing. I wasn't just going to show up on Monday and demand an apology. That would be meaningless. Instead, I would embed myself where he least expected it, using every ounce of knowledge I had gathered to turn the tables completely. By Monday morning, I would be in control of more than just my career. I would control the narrative, his image, and the respect that he had stolen from me. When Monday arrived, I dressed in my best professional attire, exuding confidence I hadn't felt since the day I was humiliated. I walked into the office with purpose, a subtle smile playing on my lips. Everyone who had seen me escorted out on Friday looked at me, puzzled, as I approached the receptionist and requested to see Mr. Henderson. To their surprise, I wasn't angry, I wasn't pleading. I was calm, collected, and in control. What happened next, when I finally made my way to his office, set the tone for the ultimate reversal of fortune. I wasn't there to beg, to plead, or even confront him in anger. I was there to execute a plan he never saw coming, using every ounce of strategy, every relationship I had cultivated, and every shred of knowledge I had gathered to ensure he would pay for his arrogance, and learn a lesson about underestimating the people he thought he controlled. I had always been strategic, and I knew that revenge wasn't about yelling or making a scene. It was about leverage. By Monday morning, I was ready. I had spent the weekend quietly solidifying alliances with our top clients, subtly ensuring they would recognize my leadership and question Henderson's credibility if necessary. I had also reached out to key members of his new partner's team, planting the idea that I was willing to collaborate with them, if and only if it aligned with transparency and integrity. By appearing cooperative, I positioned myself as a trustworthy ally, not a vengeful ex-employee, and that perception would work in my favor. Walking into the office that morning, I felt a rush of satisfaction. The air was thick with anticipation, though no one knew why. I could see Henderson across the floor, approaching his office with that familiar self-assured stride, completely unaware that his plans for dominance were about to unravel. He didn't recognize the power I had regained over the last 48 hours, nor did he realize that every move I had made was calculated to hit him where it hurt the most: his pride, reputation, and professional control. The first step was subtle. I casually stopped by the receptionist who had been complicit in his little public humiliation, and asked for a brief meeting with his new partner. She glanced at me, her confusion barely hidden, and I smiled. "It's urgent. Please let them know I'm here to discuss some mutual concerns regarding our ongoing projects." In that moment, I planted the seed that would make Henderson's life a whirlwind of uncertainty. By aligning myself with his partner's team, I became indispensable. Not just as an employee he had dismissed, but as someone who now held critical insight into his operations and connections. Meanwhile, Henderson was pacing. I could sense the tension radiating off him. He had no idea that I had already contacted several major clients over the weekend, providing updates that demonstrated my leadership, competence, and continued presence in the industry. The result was subtle but effective. Emails, messages, and acknowledgments arrived in his inbox, questioning his decisions and acknowledging my contributions. Every move I made sent his ego spiraling further into panic. I didn't confront him directly yet. Instead, I let my presence loom in his office, figuratively and literally. I made casual references to projects he had tried to claim as his own, reminding colleagues and partners in passing of timelines, data, and decisions that only I had initiated. He noticed the shift immediately, but he had no idea how deep my preparations ran. Every moment he attempted to assert dominance, I countered with quiet confidence, letting him flounder without ever speaking a word in anger. By the middle of the day, I had established my control fully. Henderson's new partner, unaware of the subtle groundwork I had laid over the weekend, began seeking my input on critical decisions. I guided discussions, provided insight, and subtly highlighted Henderson's oversights without directly attacking him. Colleagues began noticing that the woman he had humiliated was now not just competent but indispensable. The whispers of disbelief and admiration filled the office like electricity. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Henderson attempted to assert authority, to reclaim control, by scheduling a sudden meeting with top clients. I attended, prepared, and armed with detailed presentations, strategies, and data that highlighted the projects I had spearheaded. The clients, already primed by my weekend outreach, responded positively, recognizing my leadership. Henderson's attempts to interject, to redirect conversations, were met with subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement of my expertise. Each interruption, each attempt to dominate, fell flat. He was no longer in control, and it was excruciatingly obvious to him. By the afternoon, the culmination of my plan became clear. Henderson's credibility was eroding in real time. Clients questioned his decisions, colleagues sought my counsel over his, and the office buzzed with silent admiration of the woman he had tried to humiliate. I could see the panic in his eyes as he realized that firing me had been a catastrophic mistake. Every move he had made to assert dominance over me had backfired, leaving him weaker, less respected, and completely at my mercy in the professional arena. The final layer of my revenge was administrative. I had quietly submitted documentation and evidence of his mismanagement, duplicity, and attempts to sideline me to the HR department. Nothing illegal, nothing reckless, but enough to prompt internal review. The result was immediate. Henderson found himself scrutinized from multiple angles, forced to justify decisions, and painfully aware that his image as the untouchable boss had crumbled. He had underestimated not just my skill and intelligence, but my patience and strategy. By the end of the day, I had fully reclaimed my position, not as an employee under his control, but as a trusted ally, both to his partner and to the clients who mattered most. I had demonstrated, silently but unmistakably, that underestimating me was a grave error. Henderson's arrogance had been dismantled with precision, patience, and quiet power. He wasn't humiliated in a screaming, dramatic way. He was undone through control, intelligence, and undeniable competence. By Friday afternoon, Henderson's frustration had reached a fever pitch. He had spent the week attempting to regain control, scheduling meetings and trying to assert authority, but every move was countered by the alliances I had built and the subtle power I wielded. He realized too late that firing me had been a strategic error of monumental proportions. The woman he had humiliated in front of the entire office was now the linchpin of operations, the person everyone turned to for guidance, and the key connector between him and his new partner. I had played the long game, and now the payoff was undeniable. The quiet satisfaction of watching him squirm without lifting a finger in anger was intoxicating. Each hesitant glance, each frustrated sigh, each moment he tried and failed to reclaim control reminded me that patience and strategy were more powerful than impulsive confrontation. I didn't need drama. I had power. And he had none. The final act of my revenge came during a strategic planning session with the new partner and top clients. I led the discussion, presenting detailed insights, projections, and strategies that highlighted both the successes of previous projects and the potential of upcoming initiatives. Henderson attempted to interject, attempting to assert his authority, but I smoothly redirected attention to my analyses, ensuring clients and colleagues recognized the depth of my contribution. Their nods, affirmations, and questions all bypassed him, leaving him silent, powerless, and painfully aware that the respect he had counted on was now mine. After the meeting, I quietly arranged a debrief with the HR team, presenting documentation of his subtle manipulations, mismanagement, and attempts to undermine me over the months. They listened intently, already aware of murmurs around the office, and promised to monitor operations closely. It was the final checkmate. Henderson's authority had been challenged, his credibility questioned, and his image carefully dismantled without me ever raising my voice. Sitting in his office later that afternoon, now officially recognized as the liaison to his new partner and a trusted strategist, I allowed myself a small smile. He avoided eye contact, aware that he had lost the subtle war of influence that he had waged against me. Every decision, every action I took over the past week had been deliberate, measured, and precise, leaving him with no room to maneuver. I had transformed humiliation into power, betrayal into opportunity, and injustice into triumph. Looking back on the experience, I realized that true revenge isn't about drama or aggression. It's about patience, strategy, and executing your plan with intelligence. Henderson had underestimated me at every turn, and that arrogance became his downfall. I didn't just reclaim my dignity, I secured my professional future, strengthened relationships, and demonstrated unequivocally that no one should ever assume they can control or diminish me. The lesson lingered long after the week ended. There's power in resilience, in calm intelligence, and in waiting for the perfect moment to act. My revenge was not loud, not chaotic, but it was undeniable. Henderson had learned that the consequences of underestimating someone competent, confident, and strategic could be devastating. And in that knowledge I found satisfaction, closure, and a renewed sense of self-worth. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Sweet Revenge Unfolded for more. New episodes drop every single day, each one packed with shocking twists, emotional payoffs, and the kind of revenge that leaves you thinking long after the story ends.